And we're joined by Lane Billness. Lane, thank you. Really good to talk to you for two reasons. Number one, the brother of Kaylin Billness, who most of us have gotten to know as sadly one of the victims of this crane collapse, but also someone with some inside knowledge about crane safety as well. So thank you very much for doing this interview with us.
Yeah, anytime. I'm glad I'm able to, and I'm glad I'm finally in a mental and emotional state to be able to express my feelings and actually talk about this on a broader platform than just with my coworkers and just people that kind of ask about info that I have or knowledge that I have. So it's I'm very thankful to be able to do this.
Right, and I'm sure it has been really tough. Such a horrible day, and like you say, I guess it's been a 3-year journey for you, dealing with the loss of your brother so young and yourself so young. A tough thing to deal with.
Yeah, to say the absolute least. Just to kind of touch on that, when I went in for second year of school, my teacher, Ryan Downey, he kind of gave us the pep talk. Like, when you go in for first year, you're given all the information and then you're told, like, lean on your journeyman. Don't be afraid to think and try and figure things out on your own, but always lean on your journeyman to give you the direction that you need. And once you hit second year, that's kind of past you at that point, and it's more so this is how serious the job that we do is. It's a finger or a friend, and you don't get to pick. And hearing that in the February of the year that my brother had passed, I was mentally prepared. I've always kind of known the hazards and the dangers of the job that I picked and the career that I have, but I was expecting it to be someone that I look across the iron at as a union brother, as a brother, not my actual blood brother there. So it took me for a bit of a whirl. I ended up taking about 3 months off. So it's been a mental battle and a half to get to where I am now. So.
Right. So I know there's some things about the whole incident that you wanted to express. What's the number one thing that's on your mind in the aftermath of this? As we try to get to a place where this kind of work can be safer.
The biggest thing for me is just seeing parts of the industry change for the better. Like this incident could have been completely preventable if there was margins in place as far as the training that you need to do the job, the right people that you need to do the job. Like there was 4 carpenters and 2 guys that were in the crane registry on that crane. Sure, they were in the crane registry, but as far as competency goes, how competent were they actually? What kind of training did they get to be in that crane registry? And so on and so forth. So, I mean, I've been trying to get a hold of IOUE Local 115, the Operating Engineers Union, to try and touch base with them, as I am starting a petition. It's in the works as of right now. I've got to finish the write-up and send it to my union to get them to make it a little more presentable, as if an iron worker didn't write it. But the big thing for me is I would like to see parts of the industry change for the better. Like, you look at what's happened in the past 3 years in Vancouver multiple times. I'm sure there's been others across the country and in the States that have happened. The States is very, very distant from what our jurisdiction holds. Their rules and regulations are completely different as far as just ironworking alone down there. But you look at the incidents that have happened in the past 3 years, let alone the past year with cranes down in Vancouver. If there was other things in place, would those incidents still be preventable? I personally would like to think so, but that's just being hopeful. We all know how long it takes politics to kind of move things through, and it's not an overnight process. Same thing with the investigation, as far as answers for what the cause was, what WorkSafe is going to say, what the RCMP investigation is going to say. I was fully prepared for it to take up to 2 to 3 years. And I mean, as much as we want to hurry those things along, there is a lot of bases that they have to cover to make sure that they have all of the information, and the people that are going to be held accountable are the right people to be held accountable. and so on and so forth, right? So I
Right.
mean, I would love to see WorkSafe move forward with some regulations being put in place sooner rather than later. But I mean, again, everything takes time. I would appreciate it if it went a little bit faster, obviously, but
Right.
that's just kind of the name of the game.
Yeah, I'm finding the fact that WorkSafe BC has yet to put out its final report a little bit disturbing. The reason given is that it would interfere with the criminal investigation, and I keep trying to run it through my mind how WorkSafe simply doing its job and making safety recommendations should interfere with that. But I don't have an inside look at their investigation, so maybe there are reasons.
Yeah, so I mean, like the biggest thing with that, like we had previously discussed, is obviously once you bring criminal investigations into it, WorkSafe can only do so much until they have the answers from the criminal side of things. And especially with that legislation that we discussed earlier being brought into place, I believe it was anywhere between 2017 to 2018, maybe a little bit earlier, a little bit later, whatever the case
Okay,
may be.
so hang on. Let's clarify what we're talking about there. That this there is a movement to hold not only the people running these jobs accountable, but actually liable for in incidents such as this, which would force their hand to make sure that whatever rules are in place that they're at least followed.
Yeah, exactly. It's not so much a point of if I don't do my job, I'm going to get fired at this point. It's if I don't do my job and someone ends up being killed because of the decisions that I've made. Now I'm looking at jail time, and as someone with kids and a wife at home, like it's
Yeah.
one of those things that yeah, you think a little bit harder about the moves you make, and you look at the broader scheme of things of like, okay, if something were to go wrong, what will it be? And you analyze a lot of different situations a lot more thoroughly after something like that gets put into play.
And it's your understanding that we are likely, it looks like we're headed in the direction of that kind of change in the industry.
100%. So that change already has been implemented and it's in place. Um, the changes in the industry now are just regulations more so than anything for allowing companies to make the decision to save 20 grand and end up getting 5 guys killed.
Yeah. One thing that in our earlier discussion that I found shocking is that, and I don't want to downplay the importance of having good pipes, but pipe fitters need to go through a more stringent process of establishing their skill set than someone getting up on one of these cranes up in the air. Am I right?
Yeah. So they're those are called compulsory trades, and like off the top of my head, I want to say there's 13 to 15 different trades, maybe a little less, whatever the number is. But to be a compulsory trade, it pretty well ideally is you have to be a registered apprentice or a ticketed journeyman to actually go out and do that work. They have to have the paperwork, just like everything else nowadays. You have to have the paperwork in place in order to be qualified or competent to do so. Someone has to sign off on you going and being an independent worker. And again, whether you're an apprentice learning from a journeyman, as you go through your apprenticeship, you start to be given more responsibility. And it's just how we grow as tradesmen, right? But if you're a registered apprentice, as soon as you become a registered apprentice, you have to be going through school. And that's number one, first and foremost. Whether you're union or non-union, you have to be doing the training that is necessary to do your job safely and routinely. The tower crane industry as a whole is very shoddy, I'll say. Say, for instance, I'm on a site rigging for a tower crane. Whoever the better rigger is out of me and my partner, if the operator doesn't show up, the better rigger gets to climb that tower, go sit in the seat, open the book, and go, I'm an operator now. And that's absolutely not okay. It's how it's been for a very long time. And that's more so what I'm aiming at as far as regulations to be put into place to hold those companies to a standard where that stuff doesn't happen.
Right. Should we have a journeyman program for crane operating?
Yes, through IOUE 115, I believe obviously there is stuff in place to do so, but it's more so in the commercial side of things, and I hate to make it a union, non-union discussion because it entirely has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the legislation and regulations in place that allow companies to do so. But again, to just touch base on that, I know that as far as the 115 thing goes, they all have to be ticketed. If you're in the hall, they're putting you through school. They're making sure that you have all the training in place, all of the hours to be deemed as quote unquote competent to do that job.
Okay. So back to the issue of this report that WorkSafe BC is sitting on. Are you not getting impatient because accidents continue to happen?
Yeah. To be honest, I'm kind of on the fence with that one because again, I understand the length of time it takes to go through a full investigation of this sort. Like I've had minor incidents, and it's sometimes you get shut down for a day, sometimes it's 2 or 3. And for something like this, of this severity and this capacity, like it's going to take a lot longer. WorkSafe doesn't work quickly, they work thoroughly. And I was okay with like the 2-year time frame. Okay, the police are going to be doing their thing. I kind of assumed that WorkSafe was going to be doing theirs as well, but we're going on just under a year of the RCMP investigation being completed. I was hoping to at least have a little more answers from WorkSafe at this point, but again, everything takes time. It is kind of annoying, but
yeah,
for me personally, I've got a lot of intel. I've got a lot of friends in the industry. One of my best friends is actually a tower crane tech for Rapicon West. When any incident happens in the city, they're the only company that has everything in place to continue working within 3 hours. Like an incident happened in Vancouver, say 8 months ago. All of the cranes in the lower mainland got shut down. The only company that was swinging a hook within hours of that happening was Rapicon. Why? Because they have all of their COVA inspections for their structural inspections. They've got all of their paperwork in place for a moment like that, where it's like, hey, oh yeah, you want to challenge it? Okay, here you go. Are you happy? Sweet, cool. We're going back to work. And it's just onwards and upwards from there. And that's just taking pride in what they do.
Okay, you've been able to piece together some of the specifics of this particular tragic incident in Kelowna. That's coming up on 3 years ago.
Yeah, July 12th.
And without getting too technical, because we're not crane operators here, but it sounds like the problem was, at different stages of the job, they need to readjust and make sure that the counterweight creates the whole setup to be 100% balanced. Am I right? And that hadn't been done in this case.
To my understanding, yes. The term we use in the industry is make sure it's dead nuts. It's bang on, right in between those two lines on a level. You get an 8-foot level, smack it. If it's even out by the slightest, you get the operator to trolley in or out, so you can gain that perfect balance point. And as soon as you do, then it's game on. You pull your bolts, stroke out, remove your section, put it onto the platform, drop down, rebolt, torque them a little bit, like whatever the manufacturer's spec is. The cranes that I've all worked on are all pins for the most part. So it's a little bit of a different procedure. Every crane is different.
Okay, but further to that in our discussion, I don't think it's too technical for people to follow. Leading up to this incident, once it's supposedly, in that perfect balance, then there's bolts that would be removed. And if they're sticking and they're not coming out, that should be an indication that, hey, maybe we're not dead nuts, as you refer to it, or perfectly balanced. And in the case of this incident, there was your brother having to knock these bolts out of position.
Yeah. So there was different forces at play. So when you lay out your bolt holes for installation, you usually have a 16th of play. That's like if you have a 3/4 inch bolt, you go a 16th higher than that, and that gives you your wiggle room. We call it slop, to get your bolt in, and it makes that. And as my first year teacher, Kevin Jefford, says, when you're bolting up a piece, you get that one bolt to go shlink, It's a very satisfying feeling when you work for an hour to get to that point. But it should, in the grand scheme of things, you pull the nut off the top, you put your hand underneath, ideally that bolt should fall into your palm.
Right.
And there was force at play that, because they weren't balanced, that caused those bolts to be under tension. And from my understanding, it wasn't so much that they were off balance as it was they were actually pushing the crane over. There was a little diagram that I had seen a couple years ago, that, so I'll draw it on a piece of paper just so it's a little bit easier to understand for you. Because I could sit here and talk about it until I'm blue in the face, but unless you're looking at a picture of it, it may not make sense if you can't put a picture to it. So this is one section here, and the middle section is the one that you're pulling. There is little, we call them holding dogs, for your climber to sit on and press off of. So these little hooks right here, is that going to work? Probably not.
It's
Here,
pretty.
let me go like this. None. There we go. So do you see those little hooks on the side?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're stroking out, you want to be hooked up and pressing off of where the two dashes are there.
Yeah.
Where they were was they were stroking out off of the section that they were trying to pull. So as they were stroking out, when those bolts came out, there was so much pressure from the crane being pushed over that, like, the climber actually pushed the crane over on itself. And that's where everything went wrong. And those two bolts being, or four bolts being as hard up as they were, it was for good reason. They should have stopped and analyzed the situation, but it's a situation where, again, there's 4 or 5 carpenters, 2 of them are in the crane registry as riggers and competent crane operators with hours. They should have taken that step back, and they didn't, unfortunately.
Are you saying that, like, a more experienced crew would have seen that difficulty with the bolts as an alarm bell?
Yes, I've had experiences of my own where there's tension on a bolt when we're trying to dismantle some stuff, and it's okay, something's wrong here. Let's take a step back, and then you look over. Okay, this guy line or this guy wire is too tight, so you loosen off the guy wire that's pulling the column one way, and then as soon as that guy wire is slacked, the column goes back to true, and now those bolts fall out. It's just gravity, right? And different types of force that are put onto different areas of the metal.
Right. So it sounds like, I credit to you. You seem to have more patience than I do on this, but we might just get, after it's all said and done here, we're never going to get Kalen back, but we could end up with a safer industry.
Yeah, entirely. And the biggest thing for me is, I hate to use the term use them as a martyr, because they were much more than that. Kalen was a very, very good kid. He had a great heart. Everything I've heard about Jared Zook, great kid, great heart. The Stemmer brothers, great guys, great hearts. They were 2 of my brother's closest friends. They were, when you work with someone for about 70% of your day, they don't just become a friend at that point, they become like a brother. And for both of them to be older and knowledgeable in the trade that he was working in the area that he was working in, he looked up to them in a lot of ways. And it because of the severity of this and the regulations that aren't in place, having them and their story be used as a martyr, I really hope that it will help push this along in the future for the better.
Yeah. No, I don't know if the word martyr is one that I would use, but when someone dies, and when they're doing their honest best at a job, I don't know, maybe there's just some comfort to come from knowing that out of it comes something useful for someone else.
Yeah. And it's like, I could say we could use them as an example, but that doesn't even get close to touching on the severity of the situation and moving forward. It's not like it's martyr is, yeah, sure, it may not be the right word, but I'm an iron worker in the dictionary, ain't my best friend. But it holds that severity to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think Kaylin would appreciate what you're doing, Lane, and I just want to thank you for taking some time to talk to us, and maybe we'll talk again after we see the full contents of the WorkSafe BC report and where we end up.
Yeah, 100%. You have my number. If you ever have any questions or you want to do this again, I'm always more than open.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks again, Lane. Take care.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me.